All right, for more on the Beckham situation, let's bring in NFL insider Josina Anderson, who's been following this very closely. Jojo, Odell is essentially saying, I'm not interested in helping you get to the playoffs, but hey, once you're there, I'll be happy to hop on board. Did his comments help his cause, or have they hurt his cause?
Well, I didn't see the entire interview. I haven't even watched the clip. I've, heard what you said about it, and I saw, the summary of it on Twitter. And I think it's really kind of best to just go off what I know and what I've heard directly, as opposed to all of that. I think, the best thing that I can say to add context to that, I don't think that Odell Beckham Jr. is saying that he's not interested in helping a team get there. I think this really more has to do with what he already knows in his head is the obvious acclimation period. So when I hear him or you summarize and say that he doesn't really see the point, I think the context to that is relative to where he is. The timeline has not changed or shifted. So there's no big revelation with regards to that. The fact of the matter is that at December 13th, let's just go to the facts for a second. At December 13th, that puts Odell Beckham Jr., the free agent wide receiver, at the 10-month mark. And then January 13th puts him at the 11th month mark. When he previously came back from the first ACL, when that one got hurt October 25th, 2020, the period that he took before coming back from that first ACL was 11 months. Right now, he's shy of 10 months. So the idea that he was coming back and being able to contribute during the regular season without that acclimation period, one, was never said, and two, is not realistic. He needs some sort of, football acclimation, not only to the new team, to the training staff. Obviously, he's training on his own. He's a free agent. He's not, with a team. So that would have to happen anyways. Once that 4 or 5 week period, happens, then obviously, he would be ready and more ready to do it. And so when you're talking about, can he play or can he not play? As I, said earlier in the week, I think this is about when is it the most wisest to play separate. And then from a business standpoint, what makes sense to do relative to the offers that you have come in or where things stand with those respective teams, so to speak.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Certainly, we're getting to a point where teams are going to want to have him at least rostered because of the fact that they are making that playoff push. All right, let's move on to a story we had in the headlines. Saquon Barkley popping up on the injury report with a neck issue. He's been struggling. The Giants' run game is struggling. They're fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, Josina, you spoke to Saquon before the injury report came out yesterday. How surprised were you to see him on there?
Very surprised because obviously Brian Daboll spoke to the media group, and then all of the press were in the locker room after that. And the way that he was talking to the press, engaging, as I know, I was asking him very specific questions about what he thought about the way that the Eagles defense was able to contain Derrick Henry to 30 rush yards, keeping that whole running group under 100, and what he saw relative to why that happened, and also how he could potentially work around that. So he was very much engaged in those questions, and then to leave there and have him pop up on the injury report with the neck, no less, certainly raised eyebrows. But since then, we know that Daboll has said yes, that he wasn't completely able to say at that point whether he would participate in the game, but we also know that he's out there for practice. He figured he would be limited today. The media that is there right now expressing doubt that he would not play. So as of right now, we're expecting him to at least have maybe some sort of questionable designation with the likelihood of playing unless something else comes out specifically from Saquon or the team since then. What we know is that going back to week 5 and week 6 that he had that shoulder injury, but even since then, he's had 2 100-plus rushing yard games, right? Even since the shoulder injury. But since the last game when they played the Commanders, Evan Neal, the right tackle, and the center, John Feliciano, have come back. And then he was able to have a little bit more of a spike in his rushing production because it dipped in the last 3 games before they came back. And matter of fact, from weeks 1 through week 10, they had 165 rush yards per game. And then in the last 3, they've dropped to 21st ranked. In that first period, they were third ranked, and now it's 104 rush yards per game. So very interesting when you're juxtaposing that against how the Eagles defense is performing, because prior to the arrival of Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph, they were ranking 20th in rush yards per game allowed. Since the last 3 weeks that those guys have been involved, or since between week 11 through 13, now the Eagles rush defense ranks 9th against rush yards per game allowed. So obviously a little bit more potent up front. This is something that Saquon talked about and he was going to have to deal with. He was saying that his favorite person to go up against and his not so favorite person to have to go up against is Eagles defensive tackle Fletcher Cox, though he gets more chirping from Brandon Graham. So this is a team, especially the way that they're composed now, that they need a more potent rushing game, because when you have the Eagles coming in with the likes of Devonta Smith and also with the likes of A.J. Brown, who had 100+ receiving yards against the Titans, and you're looking at the secondary for the Giants with Fabian Moreau, and then also Nick McLeod, who's in there for Adoree Jackson, who's been out the last 2 games. This is why they definitely need a potent running attack.
Yeah, Josina, I mean, you were alluding to it there. I mean, playing the Eagles this week, they finished the season against the Eagles. You talk about the Eagles' defensive struggles against the run, which are starting to abate a little bit. They are getting better against the run. I mean, to your point, I mean, when we look at it overall, does the Giants' season hinge on the effectiveness of this running game, essentially, with these 2 games against the Eagles coming up in the latter part of their schedule?
Well, obviously, the more, absolutely. And the more wins you get, the likelihood is going to increase that they can get a wild card spot, because obviously right now the Eagles are so much ahead of them, and they've lost to the Seahawks already, so they're not going to get that tiebreaker. So if they lose, yes, it makes their chances worse, but then they still have the game coming up after that against the Commanders, and that tiebreaker has to be settled simply because the last time the 2 teams played, they tied. So you want to go in that game with more breathing room and not making your chances worse. But if that were to happen, then it makes it come down a little bit even more so to that game. But obviously, they're looking for the Saquon who has 4 100+ rushing yard games on the season, displayed that potency from the get-go, and even did that on 18 carries in week 1. Right now, he's needing about mid-20 carries to get that. But hopefully this neck injury for him is not going to impact him or his shoulder when he's trying to incur contact and get more yards after the carry. Really quickly, I want to make a couple things clear going back to Odell, because I want to make sure we understand this. So a couple things just to update. So relative to after the visit with the Cowboys, he did have discussions with the Ravens to have a visit. And right now that situation just kind of remains in limbo, as I mentioned, after the Cowboys visit, that he wanted to kind of regroup and get more rest mentally and kind of figure things out. There are teams, I won't get into it too specifically, but that he's having conversations relative to the contract situation. But as it pertains to the Cowboys, I would say that the best word to describe that is unconcluded, as the Cowboys are trying to figure out, what's the best thing for them when it comes to multiple factors that they're trying to figure out, not just for now, but in the future years. And also Odell trying to figure out what's best for him relative to how the talks are coming back, how things are sounding contract wise, and what's best for him as well. So just a couple things I wanted to put out there to help clarify and add a little bit more update to that situation as well.
And it's not just about this year, it's about next year too, because Odell's looking long term. She is NFL insider Josina Anderson, bringing us the latest on Odell Beckham and a little bit about what's up with Saquon Barkley. Thanks, Josina. Always great to have you on the program. For more from the NFL, including extended highlights and deeper analysis, be sure you're watching Inside the NFL. James Brown and his team of present and future Hall of Famers giving you insight only those who played the game can provide. New episodes of Inside the NFL air every Tuesday exclusively on Paramount+.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.